golly, a Tuesday release? That's right. We've got a special episode this week. We've got Alex de Campi coming on to talk about her Kickstarter for Semiautomagic with her and Jerry Ordway. Jerry Ordway being the superstar artist from Superman comics. He did Power of Shazam in the 80s. And yeah, so they're teaming up for a Kickstarter for a bonus deluxe version of their Dark Horse miniseries, Semiautomagic. It's a nice, cool horror book. The Kickstarter, if you do it, you get 3 stories exclusive to the Kickstarter version, so definitely check that out. And without much further ado, here is our interview with Alex de Campi. And joining us back on the show, we've got Alex de Campi, writer of No Mercy for Image Comics. She's currently got her own Kickstarter for Semiautomagic with the superstar artist Jerry Ordway. It's a Kickstarter for a deluxe edition of the book through Dark Horse. Alex, welcome back on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So, the Semiautomagic, everybody can see this on the Kickstarter, but for everyone too, I guess, lazy to scroll down and read.
The TLDR version.
Yeah.
It's a horror book. It's about a woman named Alice Creed, who she's basically the person you call if magic or the supernatural ends up in somebody getting murdered. And the magic it's set in the U.S., and the magic in the book is not the sort of the comfortable Vertigo style myth and legend. There are no zombies, there are no vampires, like Lucifer doesn't show up, there isn't the fairy queen or Bast. None of that happens. It's all Lovecraft stuff. It's like nasty, transformational, color out of space, not understandable things coming through from other dimensions and fucking shit up on Earth and fucking people's minds up. And a lot of it's based on concepts that come from the tradition of Japanese horror, which is very atomically based. Both myths and legends of Japan, but there's also a lot of Hideshi Hino style horror that comes from technology and from sort of psychic scarring, cultural psychic scarring of things like the war. So the horror in some ways feels very fresh, and there is a kind of an element of the old Jamie Delano Hellblazer, which I loved, in that, Alice doesn't have all of the answers. Sometimes she has none of the answers. Sometimes she doesn't even know the questions, and she's just trying shit to see if it works, because it's either that or destruction. And her friends don't have very high survival rates, and she knows it, and she feels bad about that.
Just like John Constantine. Yeah.
But it's a very unique book in that not many people go for the sort of the more Lovecraftian horror side of things, and also it's about America. It's very much, it's not trying to be a British horror book at all. It's about the weirdness in America, and there is a lot of it. Oh my God, stay weird, America! I love you. Things from old abandoned NATO silos in Connecticut to Coltsville, to the town where Colt made the West. The revolver that won the West, which is now abandoned. It's a factory town, also in Connecticut. Stay weird, Connecticut. And Jerry and I did a series in Dark Horse Presents, which very few people read. It's got amazing stuff in it, and not enough people buy it. I don't know how to make it better, but I guess it's because it's an anthology series, and it's not sort of very heavily promoted on its own. But yeah, we did 2 arcs of Semiautomagic over the past couple of years in there, and Dark Horse is collecting them. But the thing is, I am weird and broken as a writer in that I don't wait for people to tell me to do things. I just do them. So I don't pitch and then wait. I just write the story, and I find an artist, and then we kind of go to a publisher and we're like, hey, we did a thing. And the publisher's like, oh, that's cool. I wish you'd brought me in earlier. And I'm like, sorry. So I didn't stop writing the stories because Alice is a really fun character to write, and some of the things I can explore with her really interest me. And I've got hundreds of pages more in my mind that I could do. But I did 3 more stories. It ends up being about 80 pages of new content. So we've got this 104-page Dark Horse trade, which is actually coming out in June, and you can just go buy in a store. That's the collection of just the Dark Horse Presents stuff. And then Jerry and I are doing, Jerry and I and a British artist named Laura Margarita are doing an additional 80-page trade of stories on our own. And that's what the Kickstarter is funding. And when you pledge for the Kickstarter, you get both the 104-pager that Dark Horse is putting out and the new 80-pager in a nice little box set. And the only place you can get that box set and the 80 pages of new content is via the Kickstarter. Dark Horse won't carry it. I think like 2 stores might have it, but they're stores that know me really well, and my works do well there. So if you like, what I say to people is if you like Jerry Ordway's artwork, which if you have eyes, you do. And if you like, or if you appreciate what I do as a person, either in my writing or in like my random Tumblr rants about Romanian fairy tales, or just occasionally being a jerk on Twitter and terrible puns and gifs and things, then the best way to ensure that we do more stuff is to buy a damn book. Goodwill and love and like, hey, Alex, we adore you. And, is awesome. But, pledging for the Kickstarter means people go like, oh, well, gee, maybe there's a really big market for Jerry and Alex's stuff. And maybe together or separately, they should do more. So, we need people to put their money where their mouth is. And they have. We're almost funded. We're like $2,500 away from funding. Yes. And it's only been like 10 days since we launched. And And
you guys are going until the end of February?
Yeah. And I've been kind of annoying on Twitter about it, but people expect it. And I figure they'll just mute me until it's over if they get me. But I've also been posting other things, not just the Kickstarter, because that's really tedious. So yeah, we've done really, really well. We want to do more because it's like secretly between you and me and these 4 walls, we're going to do the 80 pages anyway. Like Laura's already drawing her story. Jerry's most of the way through his first story. We're just going to do that book. It's just that we all get paid and I don't lose quite as much money if you pledge all the way for the stretch goals. And there's like really fun stuff. Jerry's doing portfolio reviews. I will tell you that your script sucks. Brendan will tell you, our editor, who's been like in the industry 10 years with like Dark Horse and Top Shelf, he will also tell you your script sucks, but he'll be nicer about it. Drawn into the story, you can have Jerry Ordway draw you. There's 1 slot for a man and 1 slot for a woman. The man dies horribly. To be drawn into the Hollow Man story, which is his final 12-pager, which is I'm really proud of. It's such a good story. So there's also, or you can just buy a book. We don't do a lot of like mini prints, buttons and stickers and stuff like that because I've pledged for like 50 Kickstarters and all I want is a damn book. And if you send me mini prints, I'll just stick them in a drawer or my daughter will find them and color them. And it's like, ooh, like cool, Xander Cannon mini print with this. And I'm like, that involves like bugging Xander and then printing the mini print and then figuring out no, you're just going to get a book and we'll just keep more money, or if we overfund, we'll use that money towards more content. But yeah, we'd eventually love to do a lot more semi-automagic. So once this is kind of like all done, we'll probably see if we can find someone who wants to let us do more because it's super fun as a storytelling device to explore the American psyche.
Well, what do you think? What do you think it is about New England? Obviously, like Lovecraft, Stephen King. We had Tim Seeley talking about some of his horror influences in New England. What is it about New England that's just so damn creepy?
Well, I live in the Stephen Kingdom. I live in Maine, like up in Maine, near Stephen King. I've never met him. Or Joe Hill. It's really quiet up here, and it's dark, and the winters are long. So we have a lot of time to think about things. And we spend a lot of time indoors. It's snowing like hell right now. I drove through it because that's another thing you do in New England. Like you drive through bad snowstorms, and in the morning you shovel out your path while letting the dogs out in your flip-flops because you forgot to put real shoes on, and then you started shoveling, and then you just do it.
You guys know how to handle it, so yeah.
South and you use a blowtorch and burn your house down. But I love you.
Scorched earth.
But I love you and the rest of Boston. Anyway, I don't know what it is. I think New England has some history to it. It's one of the older parts of the U.S., but there's still plenty, just because the few examples I mentioned happen to be in New England. One of our early stories is actually set in a doom town in New Mexico. which is a town the government would set up, a fake town, and then drop bombs on to see what various bombs did to built up areas, down to having like little dolls in the houses, like human-sized dolls. Like, that's not creepy at all.
Yeah, like the beginning of Indiana Jones and
right.
the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
We don't talk about that.
Beautifully shot. That, like, there's little Spielberg, he can shoot.
Yeah.
No. Why did anyone let Shia LaBeouf have a career?
Yeah.
Oh man, Disney. It's Disney. Even Stevens.
Constantine.
Oh yeah,
That's right. Yeah, that
Also-
post-credit scene.
No. I mean, I'm still in my feelings about Tilda Swinton in Constantine, but I'm generally in my feelings about Tilda Swinton anyway.
Yeah.
She kind of exists in this really nice part of it. But anyhow, no, there's a lot of weird in America, and like serial killers in California. Like, why? Just and the South. Oh, the history of weirdness in the South.
Oh, the American Gothic stuff. Yeah, like
Yeah, exactly. So there's plenty. Like, it's a big country and it's plenty weird. And every corner of it has weird, and I'd like to explore that. I mean, dumb little things. We wanted to do a very as I lay dying type story about a couple who'd bought a fancy house like Montana or something, and when they came to take it over for the summer, they realized the caretaker had died in the elevator, which was broken at some point, in the winter, and they were really freaked out by that, and they call Alice out to kind of exorcise it, and she's like, well, actually, like, hauntings kind of don't happen the way you think they do, so it's fine, and I'll do this because I need money, but it's fine. I'll go through the motions. And then it turns out there's a whole other problem, and they kind of end up in this sort of storm and flood situation, trying to get away from the house. But there's so much you can do that doesn't even have to be based on the cultural psychic scars of America. But we have so many scars.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, I don't know if this is an American exclusive thing, but what we tend to do, I think, nationally is not acknowledge our wounds, our flaws, and so it just festers and bubbles up like Cthulhu.
Yeah, or we forget, or we just it's kind of like a mass cultural forgetting,
Yeah, just because the best way to deal with a problem is not to address it.
Yeah, just move on.
Yeah. Kind of buck up. But what was it about? I'm curious, though, because Jerry Ordway is mostly known for, he was drawing Superman when I was a kid. It's thanks to Jerry. And Jerry, if you're listening to this, thank you for letting me know that DC had their own Captain Marvel, because he did, like, the Power of Shazam in the 80s. What was it about Jerry that made him the right fit for a horror book?
He posted this thing, like, on his website, on his blog a couple of years ago, kind of grumping about how, older artists weren't getting asked to dance, as it were, and I think that's symptomatic of a lot of writers driving art decisions, and they want to work with their friends, and their friends are the same age, and they hang out with them in bars, and because that's just how it works. I mean, I have a whole tribe of people I came up with who are my same age that I hung out in bars with, and I contacted him and was like, I'll work with you. You're amazing. And we just bounced concepts back and forth. And he was kind of interested in doing horror stuff. I mean, when you've done one thing for a long time, like, if you ever asked Steranko to draw you a spy cover, he'll just be like, honey, no.
He'll slap you.
Just like Bob Kane.
No, he doesn't slap you. He's really nice. I've met him. He's lovely.
Unless you're Bob Kane.
Yeah.
We have this whole thing about him slapping Bob Kane on the show. So.
Yeah, I talked to him about that.
So if you've been doing something for a long time, it gets kind of frustrating when other people ask you to do it. This is like over and over again. I mean, this is a subset of always asking your female writers to write the female character, or always only asking your black writers to write the black character. It's like, we can do other stuff. Like, trust me, like, we've been watching white dudes for a long time. Like, we can write you really well.
Yeah.
All media is your media expressed from your point of view. We're good at it. Trust us. So, like, change is nice, and doing different things and stretching different muscles is nice. And Jerry was interested in doing horror, and he's amazing at it. He's so good at it. I mean, Jerry's just good at everything. He can draw everything. and he's done some really amazingly emotional, visceral stuff. And the pages are still just beautiful.
Yeah. There's an image on the Kickstarter page that looks like if Jerry Ordway drew the Thing. Like it's just like nothing but mouth, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. You know?
Yeah. That monster, the one with the sort of, he designed that all by himself, and so I think Jerry can do horror.
You were mentioning some of your, there was a lot of
that image, in my, like, I have this folder called Tumblr Images, and like that image is just shaded as no judgment.
I mean, chill down the spine. You mentioned that J-horror was a big influence, though, and we had kind of like geeked out about like manga and that sort of thing, especially like Death Note. What are some of your like is it like Junji Ito or any of that really informs your?
I love Junji Ito. Hideshi Hino as well, who was one of the godfathers of Japanese horror, coming, one of the early sort of like 60s and 70s manga straight after the war. I love things like Drifting Classroom, which is basically, as far as I can tell, it's what James Tynion based The Woods on. But I haven't read that much of The Woods, so I could be really wrong about that. But Drifting Classroom is amazing and incredibly hardcore. And if anyone ever thinks like No Mercy is a hardcore book, I just want to throw copies of Drifting Classroom with them, because hot damn, that book is just
dark. Yeah.
And that's a 70s book as well. I mean, a lot of the Japanese, sort of post-World War stuff, still from people who remembered the war, is horrifying, And I think that sort of just kind of all-encompassing, kind of meaningless and not understandable terror is interesting, rather than trying to couch it in something that kind of makes sense. And that's also where the Lovecraft influence comes. Like, there is no, like, the monster happens, and there's no nice excuse for the monster, which means there's no nice way for the monster to go away again. It's not like, it's not like the beginning of Cabin in the Woods, where they're like, which of the plot devices are they going to pick up? It's not mermaids.
Yeah, bummer.
One of these days.
That's still one of the best deaths in like a horror movie.
So I think that's one of the elements of Japanese horror, and also involving technology a lot more. I find a lot of American horror writers are very hidebound into horror tradition, and you don't see interesting things like it takes like remakes of Japanese movies so people even have fucking mobile phones in horror films. Mm-hmm. And the first thing we do is someone torrents like a video game in Semiautomagic, and like the torrent is like, it's a video game that shouldn't exist. It's like a new version of a game that was canceled. And so people are downloading it going, oh, this is like, Silent Hill 10. And is it ever? So we're just taking things that Japanese horror is also very good at taking the normal life of a person right now and finding ways it's horrifying. And I find American horror isn't as good as that. At that, it's more leaning on sort of tropes and traditions a lot, and leaning on mythology. I mean, part of it is that we're also obsessed with like the zombies and the vampires and stuff like that right now, because they're all successful in wider media. And Walking Dead is a wonderful ensemble story that happens to involve zombies occasionally.
Yeah, when they have to do a season finale.
When they need to kill someone, or like they have the like, let's talk about things for 45 minutes and then have someone do something really stupid.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I find it interesting that you've got like you've got Alice, the recurring character, especially with stuff like in a lot of J-horror, or at least the J-horror I've read, and a lot of like Lovecraft. I mean, in Lovecraft stories, when they're confronted by this ancient evil, they can't fucking handle it. Their mind just snaps. Or in J-horror, usually nobody makes it out alive. You look at like The Grudge, or like the superior like Ju-on, or like Ringu, or any of that, and it's like how it's kind of intriguing that there is a
Junji Ito. No one ever makes it out of a Junji Ito story.
Yeah. So what was it about, like, kind of instead of doing it like a straight up like Tales from the Crypt, like an EC horror comics kind of, and I love how that latest issue of No Mercy kind of has that horror comics like cover to it.
Yep. I also now want an Instagram filter called Argento. I really do.
Oh yeah.
Craven. Like all the Instagram filters are named after like horror films and horror auteurs.
Just nothing but Suspira. Like everything, Suspira everywhere.
Yeah, it's all sort of like magenta and green.
Yeah. What are, I mean, outside of the J horror then, what are some of your, I mean, because I mean we're big horror fans here. Like, are you like team and we always kind of like compare it to slashers, because that's kind of, you know, we're products of the 80s, and that's like slashers were king.
Yeah.
Are you team Michael Myers, team Freddy Krueger, or team Jason Voorhees?
I'm more team Mario Bava, to be fair, or team team Argento, team actually, fuck it, I'm team Lucio Fulci now and forever. He's my man. And
just like the more, I guess there's something more psychological about watching like the Argento films, like watching the opening of Suspiria, which is one of the, you know, the scarier openings, or even like some of the
Suspiria is like slightly corny, but I mean
for sure.
Something like Lucio Fulci's The Beyond is a wonderful film, and it's beautifully shot, and it's just weird. It's just wonderfully weird. I'm probably on the horror side. I'm a little more of a John Carpenter girl.
Yes,
everyone's Mike Myers.
He's the best.
Yeah.
It's that William Shatner terrifying face.
As long as it's the John Carpenter Mike Myers.
John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Well,
there is only one. Like there like on Planet Alex, there was no remake of Charade, and there was and no John Carpenter film has ever been remade.
The Thing.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a weird remake they did, or remake sequel thing. They
prequel.
Prequel, yeah, because
it's a remake of the original movie, The Thing from Another Planet or Another World or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I remember I saw the 2011, The Thing.
It was etched in my memory.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, I love John Carpenter's The Thing. It's probably my favorite John Carpenter movie, probably my favorite Kurt Russell movie. And I remember I saw, just to be like, I'm gonna I'm gonna help out The Thing, you know, because there's only like one other person in the theater. And I got home and I watched, you know, the Carpenter one, just because it's, you know, the end of that movie is the beginning of John Carpenter's movie, and I immediately regretted seeing it because it answers all those questions to what happened to the people that, you know, Kurt Russell and them come across. And I'm like, man, I wish I never knew why that, you know, guy's face was smushed together as a Two-Face. Yeah,
just
you know,
not canon in your mind.
Yeah,
just like Alex doesn't, you know, think there's any sequels to any.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Rob Zombie never touched Halloween.
Yeah,
yeah.
Laurie Strode is not Michael Myers' sister.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's scary. Yeah, but anyway, to take it back a bit, yeah. So, what is it? I mean, you've got. I mean, especially with No Mercy, which is for all our listeners who aren't aware, like this is your creator-owned book with Image, and things in this second arc got really fucking brutal and really fucking dark with like Charlene and everything.
Yeah. I think everybody expected the book to get better. I mean, like not better in like quality, because obviously it's awesome, but but they expected things. And the weird thing is with No Mercy is like parts of it are getting better for people. But this next arc the current arc is, I mean, issue 7 bad, like it's just bad things happen on a regular basis. And it's just the most melodramatic goddamn series in the world. Like, and one of the fun things is how we're able to continue to spin that. It's like we set out in the first 4 issues, and there was a ton of tension in that book, and even as creators, we thought, okay, well, we're not going to be able to maintain the level of tension that we did in the first couple issues, and we have, and all the way through 9, which is the end of the arc. It continues to be an incredibly tense, gripping book where you don't know where it's going, and then the next arc is also pretty hardcore.
Well, yeah.
So, you know, in a way, so like some things are getting better for some people, but also things are getting progressively worse for others. And yeah.
Well, and it's becoming like clear because I mean, if you had only read like volume 1, you'd think like, oh man, this like it's all going to be hung up on the bus crash in the first arc, and it's like, oh, that was just the inciting incident. like even now they're like leaving the fucking like crash site, things are getting worse. Was that always kind of the mission statement?
Yeah, I didn't want to do a survival book. I didn't want to basically do Lost. Where they're there for, and also, you know, like they fell off a mountain, but you can see down that mountain. So sooner or later, someone was going to stop. You know, like it's just not realistic to expect that bus crash. You know, even on a road where people don't use much because it's an expensive freeway rather than the local road. You know, it's the IMF Boondoggle project. You know, they were going to get found. And they were not, you know, they would be lost maybe a week at the most, you know, but I highly doubt even then it would have been that long. So they had to be found. And really the book is more about the interpersonal relations of the kids, as well as outside forces that happen to them and the decisions they make. I never wanted to do just a survival book because I think I would find that very boring.
Well, and we're seeing kind of like, I mean, we're seeing two characters in particular at a real crossroads. We've got Travis, who in the first arc we think is like the king shit, like, I know what's going on. And we're starting to see some massive cracks in his psyche. And then Charlene, who we think is arguably the nicer of the twins, gets really dark really fast. Like, so what can we expect? Because the latest issue of No Mercy hits this week. What can we expect moving forward for the remainder of the arc?
Tiffany and Deshawn ended up in the wrong car. So that's pretty much what happens in issue 7. I mean, Charlene is dealing with a lot of things right now, and they are they will. The decision that they made in issue 6, the thing they did, is not something that they're really like pleased with themselves about. They're going to feel immense regret and guilt, and have to deal with that. I think in issue 9 we go into a little bit more of Charlene's family history. It's actually a flashback issue, and you know, though violence is never justified, their family are shitbags.
Oh,
like
yeah.
They're like, Chad is a shit, and Charlene's family have not given them what they needed in terms of support and understanding at all. And so, you know, it's a tough thing. I mean, one of the things about this book is it's not a clean book in terms of their protagonists and antagonists. The book is more like hanging out with a bunch of friends in that sometimes they can be real assholes. And sometimes you meet people and you don't like them at first, but then you realize you do like them as you actually get to know the person underneath. And sometimes you do like them, but they drive you nuts anyway. So it's not like the good characters and the bad characters. I mean, Chad was probably the closest we had to a straight up bad character.
True, yeah.
But everybody else, it's up for grabs. And, you know, one of the things we see also going through 7 and 8 is that is Troy, who's a character I really, really like. You know, like I like all these characters except for Chad. Chad's dead now. Chad's dead, baby. You have to imagine the katana.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Chad's dead. You know, the Troy, who's a really nice character and who I really like, he gets really pushy about something, and like he's got like he and Kira are like getting to be friends, and he was really awesome when she was kind of by herself, cheering her up and like kind of being there for her. And then he gets really, really pushy about something, and you can see how like as they move towards what happens to them and Anthony in 7 and 8, like you kind of think, oh, well, okay, Troy's got this facet to his personality that's coming out now that I'm not sure I like as much. Like, he's still a nice guy, but in this situation, he like he needs to like chill out and sit down. But this is our friends. These are like dynamic, rounded, complex characters. sometimes I worry they're kind of too complex for comics. That sounds awful. But yeah, it's a real journey with them, and they regularly make really bad decisions. But like, who doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm feeling. I mean, Gina is like the most. They're like she can catch no breaks, and like this arc is her going from like bad to worse, and I'm assuming that trend continues for the rest of the arc.
She's about like hit bottom. She's got an interesting arc from here on in because of what happened to her. I mean, her family who love her aren't necessarily going to help because like her dad is pretty much on, is on a mission of vengeance now because someone's hurt his baby and he needs to attach blame, which is an very American thing to do. He needs to someone needs to pay, quite literally, for the harm that's been done to his daughter, which is something I think we can all feel. I mean, like if
sure,
if you went after my kid, I would do a very good Winter Soldier impression on you. But it's not necessarily a helpful thing at the time. And when she comes back, like she essentially will end up going straight back to college, and she's in the popular girl dorm, which is called the Zoo, which is like this 12-girl dorm, and it's kind of like a real honor to get into if you're like a popular girl because all the parties get thrown there and all the cool girls are there. And that's really the wrong place to go for a girl who essentially is coming back with PTSD and like nerve damage in her hand and one eye. So she when she left and was planning to go to this dorm, she was this cute girl who'd been like the star of her high school musical and could sing really well and was the popular girl in school. And now she's actually going to college and she's a very different person than she was a few months ago. And she's going to really struggle with the sort of the PTSD and being able to deal with college. So when you come, No Mercy is about consequences. It's a book about the consequences of rapid incidents. And comics is, again, not something that deals with consequences very well. We deal with action, and we never deal with the aftermath. We deal with a city being destroyed. We don't deal honestly with the people rebuilding the city, the people who lived in that city, whose homes were destroyed, whose kids died when the kindergarten, was landed on by the monster. That to me is a much more interesting human story. Is what you do after the battle, how you heal if you can heal, how you attach blame. Where you go, what you do.
Yeah, actually explore the because every battle has its casualties.
Yeah, and some of them are still walking.
Yeah,
and happy things happen in this book. Like there's a lot of like ridiculous, stupid, happy things that happen. It's just when it's dark, it's hella dark.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's also a book called No Mercy.
It lives up to the name.
Yeah,
as we said last time, it definitely does.
Yeah. Now, I would be remiss before we let you go, Alex. We briefly talked about like Straw Dogs and stuff the last time you were on. Our own
Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah, speaking of consequences and things, I mean that's very much a Sam Peckinpah thing.
Yes.
In his films, and especially Straw Dogs. Yeah, but since you've been on last, I think you helped inspire this, and also my dad. Who's not tech savvy whatsoever, so he would go into a Barnes and Noble for I swear for like years, and walk up to the guy and he's like, "Do you guys have Cross of Iron by Sam Peckinpah?" And they'd look at him like, "What the fuck is Cross of Iron? And who the fuck is Sam Peckinpah?" And so for Christmas last year, I bought him Cross of Iron on DVD, and I had never seen it, and we watched it together. We actually watched it for a second time recently during the snowstorm, and it's one of the most unique war films I've ever seen, and it's kind of become my favorite. I mean, I'm still very much a novice in terms of the Sam Peckinpah ways, but Wild Bunch, yeah. I mean, but I've been talking to the guys ad nauseum about this, and I invite you to join wherever you may be on February 21st, spiritually, wherever. It's the 91st birthday of Sam Peckinpah, and this is inspired that I was like, it's going to be Sam Peckinpah Day. And so I've like upgraded all the DVDs that I've had of his on Blu-ray.
Getaway, and you need maybe the head of Alfredo Garcia.
Well, it's funny, as we've been talking, we're gonna try to get it on Laserdisc because that's the cheapest option, and I feel like that movie's like, because I tried to get it on DVD and it's like $50-$60 on eBay.
Is it like Criterion?
Yeah, no, it's just Blu-ray. But I feel like that movie is out of print. But
whereas the Laserdisc is not even $10.
It's true. but the Getaway was actually the first one I upgraded because I had seen that one probably too young as a child because I was like in love with Steve McQueen. I think he's like the coolest guy.
You watch Junior Bonner and then you're like, this is going to be awesome.
But no, it's the Getaway, Straw Dogs, Wild Bunch, Cross of Iron, and Bring the Head of Alfredo Garcia. But so I invite you on February 21st, wherever you may be, pick a movie or two, have a beer or two, and like watch Sam Peckinpah.
Light a cigar.
And a cigar.
Live tweet with us.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask
Whiskey.
you. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you though, like, what kind of touching back on Sam Peckinpah? What is it that he's really inspired? Kind of in your writing and just as someone, as a filmmaker, because he's kind of taken on this. Almost Wild West mythology with the way he was, kind of on set, with his ramblings and some of his crazy aspects. But I feel like it feels kind of tragic too, because I think during his time that really kind of affected him the way people saw him. But I kind of feel like a lot. I'm hoping, not just me, but just other people, that he's kind of gaining more respect, like he should have had back in the 70s and 80s. But what is it kind of about Sam Peckinpah that you really enjoy?
Well, there was a letter actually posted on my Twitter that someone dug up, and some like 20-year-old had sent a letter of complaint to Sam Peckinpah about the violence in Straw Dogs.
Yeah.
And that it was excessive and unacceptable, and that he walked out of the cinema and he's not an old fogey, he's only 20. And I'm like, this person people have not changed. We just have Twitter now.
That's true. Yeah.
And Sam Peckinpah wrote back going, I did not want you to enjoy my film. I wanted you to look into your immortal soul. And I'm like, I think this is part of it. Like, Sam Peckinpah, for me, it's a bit like Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. He writes about consequences, and he doesn't Hollywoodize the violence, and it's weird in the era of Zack Snyder. And if you ask me where I stand on Zack Snyder, I'd say I'd opt for the throat. But these faux grim and gritty things that still have this incredibly like pandering, moralizing to them. There were no morals in the Sam Peckinpah film. Shit just happened. Like, bad shit happened. And I think if you've ever had bad shit happen in your life, especially a lot of bad shit, you kind of dig Sam Peckinpah because he gets it right. He gets the feeling of when things go wrong, they just go so wrong, and they go so wrong so fast, and you have no control over fixing them. And that the sort of out of controlness of it is what I love about him. Like, people get in these situations and there's no way out, and they know there's no way out, and there's no way out, and he still makes it gripping.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a story I heard about him that I didn't know until fairly recently when I was kind of diving into the life of Sam Peckinpah that I found fascinating and really kind of explained how he sees violence in films. Because what I like about his movies too, there's a great interview that I saw. Unfortunately, there's not a lot on YouTube of him, but there's a great 20-minute interview where he talks about violence in film, and he's one of the few directors who talks about it. Like you said, it's not a stylized thing. It's never meant to be cool in a Sam Peckinpah movie. It's something that hurts. It's terrible. It's visceral. It's horrible. And he talked about how he was, I think, in the Marines, and he was stationed overseas. And while he never saw combat
in China,
he saw a laborer killed by a sniper rifle or by a sniper. And he said when he saw it happened in slow motion. And I think that's so kind of fascinating that that's become such a trademark of his in his films that Sam and I kind of joked it's kind of the Sam Peckinpah sandwich where, like, in The Wild Bunch, for example, you'll see someone be shot in slow motion to start a scene off, and in between there'll be rapid cuts of all this kind of crazy chaos and violence, and then it ends with that guy dropping, and
basically William Holden's death.
Yeah, and it's just, and I think that's so interesting to see something that happened to him as a younger man really affect the way he saw violence in film, and does it kind of unlike anybody else still to this day. Like I said, slow motion has become this kind of like stylized cool thing, but for him it was never about that, and I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, if obviously you might be interested in seeing Takeshi Kitano's Outrage series. I think they're both on Netflix, Outrage and Outrage Beyond. They're Yakuza films. I'm also really into Yakuza films. Yes. and it's Yakuza films where he's not trying to glamorize the Yakuza or make it cool, and they're all kind of older actors, and the violence when it happens is horrifying. He does that really amazing thing of like, boring, quiet, incredibly horrifying violence, like to the point where I had to leave the room a couple of times, or like pause and have a little breather. But yeah, I think the way Peckinpah treats violence as something incredibly ugly is rare, because we now have this sort of, in the grim and gritty films, the violence is still something that is portrayed as desirable, as almost sort of erotic ballet of violence. It's why I had to turn off Kingsman when they had the scene in the church with the fundies. And I'm just like, I'm out. Like I'm like I love Sam Peckinpah like my long lost like film brother. So I'm down with violence. I'm not down with the morality of glamorizing this particular violent scene in a really morally vacant way. I mean, I find a lot of Mark Miller's work morally vacant. And who's the filmmaker who did that? It was a Lock, Stock guy.
Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah,
Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, and he doesn't help either. He doesn't. I feel like he doesn't really think about the larger issues. I mean, there are filmmakers who think tremendously about the symbolism behind their work, and there are others who are just like, hey, it's cool.
Just popcorn.
Yeah, and I think Matthew Vaughn is the it's cool variety, and I am the let's overthink everything variety. So we were bound not to get along.
One final last thing about Sam Peckinpah. We're recording commentaries for the Superman films, like to get kind of ready for the Batman v Superman films, and there was a period of time for maybe a nanosecond where Sam Peckinpah was being looked at to direct the Superman movie that came out in 1978. And we've kind of been, maybe me just more than anybody else.
Well, and the producers shit-canned him because he pulled a gun out or produced a gun during their meeting.
Yeah. But just to kind of like think of the idea, and we were joking, like, Clint Eastwood was offered the role of Superman. Could you imagine a Sam Peckinpah directed Superman film where Clint Eastwood was Clark Kent?
Christopher Cooper and I have already imagined that film in great detail.
Oh wow! Because we were
we're joking around. There's I've always wanted to do this kind of like Terrence Malick / Sam Peckinpah Justice League film, which is
the coolest thing ever.
The Justice League is all these like old dudes and dudettes like in like a VF Better Than Foreign Wars like house, and the Flash is obviously a complete speed head, and like meth head speed, just always kind of shaking a little bit, with DTs, and and they're all kind of all these like fucked up cases who no one really believes that were like awesome. And then they probably have to go save something, but mostly it's just going to be them sitting around eating biscuits and swearing at each other.
I can already envision like the Wild Bunch type cover with the Justice League or whoever just
walking into the sunset,
there looking like a bunch of badasses.
What do you think of the quieter Peckinpah films like The Ballad of Cable Hogue or Junior Bonner?
I like them. I'm not a massive fan of them. They're not the ones that stand out in my memory. I may not even seen Junior Hogue. I'm a terrible completist. I mean, like, I also will stand for Jean-Pierre Melville like nobody else, and I still haven't seen all of his films. All like the Belmondo ones, I just haven't watched. Because for me, Melville is, and I know someone's going to be up in my mentions going, but you have to like, it's amazing. I know it's Melville, of course it's amazing. Like, fuck you, I know that. But for me, he's all Alain Delon. Top criminal films, and they're so good. Oh my god. John Woo's Killer, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a shot-for-shot remake of a Jean-Pierre Melville film called Le Samurai, which because John Woo is almost as big a stan for Jean-Pierre Melville as I am. Almost. And he tried to remake one of the other great Melville films, Cercle Rouge, for many, many, many years. He wanted to do with it what he'd done with Le Samurai. And Le Samurai and The Killer are very different films. But if you do them as a doubleheader one night, see The Samurai first because it's a slower film, and then you'll watch it and you'll be like, this really, really is just a Hong Kong remake of Samurai. Bob Lefebvre, Bob the Gambler is also really good. I like Fleek, which is a later one. But, if you have to see only two of them, see Le Samurai, because it's basically the Hitman film. It is the Hitman film from which all other Hitman films stem. Everything draws back to that film in the West. And then see Cercle Rouge, because Cercle Rouge is just amazing.
Well, it kind of reminds me how Leone basically unauthorizedly remade Yojimbo as Fistful of Dollars, to the point where Kurosawa successfully fucking sued Leone. He's like, it's a great movie, but it's my movie.
Yeah.
And not that Kurosawa was above pulling from westerns to or new wave crime noir, for that matter. If you think back to something like The Bad Sleep Well, which is, by the way, the film with the best name in the history of film.
Not Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
It's a tie.
Yeah, that's the one where I feel like I can finally call myself a Peckinpah fan when I see, because from everything I've seen, I feel like that's the movie that like people either say it's like
most wanted to make as like that's most him.
Yeah, I heard that was the one he got like final cut on too. He was like, I'm making this movie. It's the way I want to make it, and because of that, either people are like, it's the best film ever, or it's the worst film ever. But just
the antithesis of Pat Garrett.
So that's very much kind of like the celebration of Sam Peckinpah Day, 91-year-old, wherever you are, Sam Peckinpah celebration.
I will do that. I'm going to be in LA. I might be at Long Beach Comic Con then.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right on. Well, I know.
I'm leaving for LA on Wednesday because I just need to get the hell out of Dodge for a couple weeks.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be there for WonderCon, and I know Jake's going to be in Seattle for Emerald City. So
I will. Yep.
I'm a guest for Emerald City, so
we could talk about Peckinpah then. I hopefully will have seen them bring the head of Alfredo Garcia by then.
And there you have it. But so closing out, Alex, anything you want to talk about Semiautomagic at all before we sign off?
Not really. It has we have a lot of art and a lot of pages from the book on the Kickstarter. And if you go to my Twitters, which is Alex de Campi, yay, crazy foreign name, then you will find a link. And if you would dust us with some of your magic money, and then we will send you a book in several months and love you forever. And then I get to make more books.
Which is,
that's the goal.
Yeah,
that's
and
the key.
And congrats on all the accolades I saw at the end of the year for Archie vs. Predator.
Thank you. Yeah, that was people really I don't know. It's funny because I do very little work for hire. I only do work for hire if it's an editor that I know and I trust, and I get say in the artist choice, and yeah, and basically if I know my team has my back, I'll do it. But otherwise, I don't pitch for things. People come to me. They know where I live. They know what I do. If they think that works for them, they come to me. And also, they have to pay me.
It's like Rambo 3. You're at the Buddhist temple.
That's
in the
right,
beginning.
yeah.
I am. I'm totally Rambo 3. You just count damn steps.
Rambo 3. That's perfect.
I can, stick fighting and everything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, well, thanks again for coming on.
Book that the whole team we just had so much fun on that book, and I'm pleased that people are enjoying it, reading it as much as we enjoyed making it, because we really did make the craziest, nastiest slasher horror book we could possibly think of, and even got a Frank Castle cameo in there because we are bosses.
Take that, Marvel.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, thanks again, Alex, for coming on, and again, for all you listeners at home, check out those links that we're including with this. Support it. Just $20 gets you the book. Digitally, and you can, if you want to up it, you can get the print version too. There's perk rewards. You can get the script reviews. You can get the signed copies. You might even be able to get a signed copy of Grindhouse if you contribute enough. So yeah, definitely check all that stuff out over on Kickstarter. Alex, thanks again for coming on.
You're welcome.
All right.
Good to talk to you.